Lo-fi old man feature. 10 guitar stuff you probably didn't know or didn't think was important. Part 2. Number 1. With enough distortion, all guitars will sound the same. If we are the type of person who goes for those overtones, undertones, and sub harmonies that we find in some pickups, we can't play with too much distortion. Otherwise, a square in a custom shop will sound almost the same with enough distortion. Number 2. Chase the tone, then let it go. Technology has advanced so far that we can almost duplicate any tone with plugins, modulars, amps, and pedals. So there's no need to get that exact guitar and gear that Hendrix or Cobain had to get the authentic tone. I understand chasing tone is one of those things that us guitar nerds like to do, and that is fine, for as long as it doesn't burn our wallets. And this is just my opinion, but playing technique is much harder to copy and attain than that authentic OG tone. I do watch videos of dudes who do deep dives into the gear and tone of Kurt Cobain or Jimi Hendrix or whoever, and I find them interesting and inspiring. But after a few years in this hobby, I care less about what guitar or pickup I have in my hands, and I'm more concerned with my playing. Number 3. The guitar community is generally chill. Let's keep it that way. Yes, we probably don't like some of those in the hobby, but we don't need to be snarky or disrespectful. It's like music genres or artists we don't like. That's fine. We just need to keep it respectful. That way we can enjoy the hobby more. Number 4. If you have more than 3 guitars, it helps if we know basic guitar setup so that we can do 3 things: tuning, action, and intonation. Tuning is self explanatory. Any guitar player must know how to tune his or her guitar before every song, if possible. If we buy a guitar, we have the aspiration, at least, of knowing how to play it. Part of knowing how to play it is knowing how to tune it. Action is a distance of the strings from the frets and fretboard. Unless we are doing slide guitar, the higher the action, the harder it is to play the guitar. Intonation is keeping the guitar in tune through all parts of the fretboard. The distance of the string from the nut to the bridge saddle have to be an exact distance so the string is in tune through all the frets, not just up there near the headstock. There are many good videos on how to adjust action and intonation in YouTube. I don't need to make a lousy one here. Some of the tools you'll need are a tuner, a small screwdriver set, the Allen key wrench or socket to adjust the truss rod, the ubiquitous WD-40, the electronic version of WD-40 or equivalent, some kind of polish, and some oil to keep the fretboard from drying, and a pencil to lubricate the nut and bridge. Number 5. If you have more than 7 guitars, it will be better if you know some basic luthier skills to do simple repairs, like replacing tuners, busted pots, sanding off sharp fret edges, and so on. And then as we get better, we can embark on more complicated projects, like shiving the necks of bolt-on guitars, adding a whammy bar, or replacing pickups. With my meager skills, I cannot charge you a fee for fixing your guitar, nor will I do it. I'm not that good. However, for my own guitars and needs, what I can do will do fine. Having a good luthier around is helpful, but anything we ask them to do, they need to get paid for it. And if they're good, most probably there will be a wait list, so we may need to wait days or weeks before we can have the guitar back. Also, if there are many issues we want them to do, we need to keep in touch with them every so often to make sure that all the problems are addressed. I've had situations that the guitar was returned only to find out one thing or two still needed fixing. As the saying goes, if we do something often enough, it gets easier and the results get better. And yes, there were projects that I had to revisit several times before I got to a point where I was satisfied with the work. We will need the tools for setup, as mentioned before, and then some more. I can't cover everything, but here are some. For electronics, a soldering gun and soldering lead, copper tape, heat shrink tubing, and good old masking tape. For woodworking and frets, we need several grits of sandpaper, a fret puller, a small hammer, preferably with a rubber head, a drill, a Dremel, some screw extractors, some steel files of different shapes and sizes, a cutter or scalpel, and some kind of glue, perhaps wood glue. For painting, paint stripper, spatula, several grips of sandpaper, sanding sealer, and your preferred finish. There are also tools that are specific to the guitar, like a two-sided file for dressing frets, and there are a few other, but I've managed to improvise for the others. This list is by no means complete. We need to assess the situation we're in, if we can really pull it off, walk through all the steps to do the work, and gather up the tools and materials that we need. It's never too late to learn a skill. I learned to solder when I got back into guitars, and stripping paint and redoing body finishes. Number 6. Modding. Let's do the warning first. Adding modifications to a guitar or modding a guitar will not increase its value. That's just how the market works. Yes, there will be some queer nerds like me who can spot something great quickly, but for the general guitar market, changing the stock guitar specs, even if you're upgrading the parts, will not increase its value. And sometimes modding will even lower the value of the guitar. Said differently, the more we personalize a guitar, the less is its potential to be resold at a premium. However, modding opens up a lot of opportunities for our hobby. We can buy a dirt cheap guitar and turn it into something great for us. We can also buy a nice guitar with issues and bring it to a decent and playable state. Here are some quick examples. This is the default PAF Les Paul with Gibson R8 custom backers on a 2008 Edwards ELP 125 SD. Many years ago, a gentleman swapped the pickups of his Gibson R8 with OX4s. With a little research, I was able to reach out to him and convince him to sell the stock custom backers to me. He agreed, and I slapped it on an Edwards Les Paul copy with 50s wiring. The 50s wiring retains the high end even if we dial down the volume. There are a few reasons why I didn't install this on a Gibson. The Edwards is lighter and cheaper than the Gibson Les Paul. And then, the stock Seymour Duncan pickups on the Edwards I transferred to another guitar. However, not all Les Pauls and other copies made in Japan or Asia are light. I just chanced upon a light one and decided I like this better than a Gibson for my default PAF Les Paul. There usually is a reason why a nice guitar is being sold cheap, and in this 1977 Yamaha SA60, there were strip screws and two knobs turned 360 degrees. The seller informed me about the knobs, but the strip screws I discovered myself. If I wasn't ready to take on this project, this wouldn't have been a viable guitar for me. This is my first semi-hollow rewiring project, and it was not easy, but I got it done in 2 days. This began life as an ordinary square tele, and the mods are obvious. However, this is a great guitar. It's the only tele I need with all sorts of sounds coming from the pickups, from a middle teletone to a neck gretsch, a Seymour Duncan Mini JB at the bridge, to strat sounding tones for positions 2 and 4. The switching is not the traditional tele system. It uses the Nashville 5-way wiring. As you can see, my woodworking skills are not great, but they get the job done. Aside from being able to do minor repairs on the guitars that we already have, we can go into fun projects like this, and sometimes we get pleasant surprises on how great it sounds and plays. But as I have mentioned in the caveat, to me these are great guitars, but I doubt if these will fetch premium prices in the market. In short, I'm stuck with them forever. Modding guitars can be its own fun, but it may not be a success story the first time out. We need to be ready to drop it for a while and gather enough time and patience again to work on the project properly. If we rush things, we may not be happy with the results. The projects I do need to be gig ready with no issues and fully intonated and set up. Nothing less. Nothing can be more frustrating than putting everything together only to discover that there's a missing ground or a buzz or if the pickups or knobs aren't working. Take a step back, leave the project like it is. Go through everything mentally until we have time to work on it again. And it would be doubly frustrating while troubleshooting that we messed up the things we did right and have to redo them because we still can't find the problem. But if you watch luthier videos like I do, that is why luthiers are paid because they do this for a living. And what looks like a difficult project to us is just another day in the office for them. And of course, as we get better, we can take on bigger projects. Number seven, buying used has its pros and cons. Unless the guitar was previously owned by a dude named Jimmy, whether this Jimmy or this Jimmy, a used guitar usually sells for less than the brand new item. Second, if the guitar has been with the seller for a while and is stuck, a pre-owned guitar should play and sound well. Pre-owned guitars have been checked and set up previously, so unless the guitar has been handled poorly, a pre-owned guitar should be good to go at purchase. But there is also the possibility that the guitar has issues and could be one of the reasons why the owner is selling it. Some sellers may be upfront with all the issues, but some will not say anything. This is especially true with really old guitars from the 50s to the 70s. But it can also be a new guitar, and if it is already being resolved, it could be a flag that something is wrong. Generally, people in the market are willing to cooperate, like providing more pictures or a video demo. Some are willing to open up the guitar to show what pickups are underneath. Don't let the excitement of the purchase cloud or objective evaluation of the guitar. There's usually enough content in the internet to do research, and the forums and social media may be of help. So, unless we have gone through some checklists on the key issues, there's no need to rush. Yes, there have been some items on the market that lasted less than a few hours before being sold out, but this is the exception rather than the rule. Some issues are deal breakers, like twisted or cracked necks, dead pickups, worn frets, and seized screws. But buying pre owned is a way to get good guitars at a lower price, and it saves trees. Number 8. Try Asia, specifically Japan. Not only does Japan have some nice locally made guitars, but among all the Asian countries, Japan may have the biggest market for old and high end guitars. Even the copies of the copies can be nice. This is a Hirby, which is kind of a Greco copy. Greco makes very good copies of Fenders and Gibsons, especially during the 1979 to 1982 era. This Hirby has Maxon pickups, like the Grecos, but since it is not a Greco, it's cheaper than the Greco. And since I've stopped chasing tone, the stock pickups sound okay, so it stays stock. Korea is the former source of the budget version of many US brands, especially the old models, before the manufacturing transferred to China and Indonesia. A made in Korea guitar would generally be a good guitar. Some Kramers and Epiphones are still being made in Korea. That said, I've tried guitars from China and Indonesia, and they are also fine. Trying Asia is a good option for the hobbyist living in that part of the world, as shipping and taxes may jack up the acquisition cost of a made in USA guitar. And the guitars in Asia are generally cheaper than those made in USA, Mexico, or Europe. Number 9. Let's try to sing and play at the same time. Yes, we may not have the silky vocal cords of Sade or the soaring rock chops of Chris Cornell, but unless we are absolutely tone deaf, our voices can be trained regardless of our starting singing abilities. Many songs need only a voice and a guitar, and with this, we can complete songs even if we don't have a band. Yes, we may annoy the household or the neighbors, but we can keep it down a bit until we have our chops right. For me, singing and playing fulfills the hobby. I can do as many covers as I want, and I can always redo the lousy covers. The band that my friends have been discussing for a couple of years doesn't have any chance to materialize now. Until then, I can keep playing and enjoy the hobby. Provenance is cool, but make your own stories with your guitars. So I put a big deal about having Jimmy Reed's K guitar or the Strat or Flying V of Jimi Hendrix, but that's just a vicarious experience. Just like the movies, the most important life story is still our own. More important than the life stories of our idols. Bonus number 11. Vintage Fender is 1964 and earlier. Vintage Gibson is 1966 or 1969 and earlier. Anything newer is just an old guitar. Any other brand to me is just an old guitar also. I'm not knowledgeable enough to comment on old Gretches, Bigsby's, Moss Wrights, the Armonds, and Rickenbackers. Leo Fender sold the company in early 1965 to deal with some health issues. Maybe for a couple of years, say 1965 and 1966, the company was still making guitars from the old parts, so that's the gray area. As we move to the 70s, there may still be some old parts used. By this time, CBS management has stepped in with their cost cutting measures. Ted McCarthy ran Gibson until 1966 when he retired, and in 1969, Gibson was acquired by Norlin. So the cut-off is a little more hazy. But again, probably up to the early 70s, we have some old stock running around. But as the years creep from 1969, it is a case of diminishing returns. That said, a vintage guitar does not guarantee a good guitar. The quality control was not mechanically supervised. There wasn't any CNC or computer numerical control machines yet doing standard body and neck shapes. No plec machine. Everything was eyeballed and there was no 21-point quality checklist. On the contrary, everything is old, the pots and switches are temperamental, and just like any guitar from this year or any year, it's a crapshoot if the vintage is any good. I've watched several videos where old guitar geeks reminisced back in the 70s and 80s when there was no such thing as a vintage guitar. They were just old guitars. The word vintage in our hobby is simply a marketing term meant to jack up prices. If a true vintage Press CBS 64 Strat can sell for $16,000, should a 1970 CBS Strat sell for $7,000 just because it is almost vintage? You'll have to answer that yourself. If we really want to go down this rabbit hole, I'd say that every era, from the 50s to today, there are good guitars and there are lemons. And as always, caveat emptor, or buyer beware, or do your homework first before you send to cart the item. It helps to have some kind of checklist for these things. Can I afford it? How heavy is it? Are the pickups original? How much additional work does it need? Is it a duplicate of what I have already? Will I play it or just put it on display? Anyway, hope to see you back soon. You know how the YouTube machinery works. I don't have to tell you to like and subscribe, but please do.